Back before phones and social media took over everything, my friends and I practically lived outside. When I was around 13, the park down the block was our unofficial headquarters. It was the perfect spot. 3 sides surrounded by woods, the last side facing the street, and no houses nearby to yell at us for being loud. At night, it felt like our own private world. That Saturday, after grabbing pizza and hanging out at Tony's house, his mom came outside yelling at us to either quiet down or go somewhere else. 3 kids went home, but Tony, Rob, and I decided to ride to the park instead. The night air was cool, almost refreshing, and riding bikes in the dark always felt strangely calming. The park itself was small, just a little baseball field, some benches, and a playground with a swing set and a spiraling metal slide. We always hung out on the playground platform because it was slightly elevated and hidden. We were sitting there talking when Tony suddenly whispered, "Shoo! Did you hear that?" We paused. Nothing, but the way he looked around made us uneasy. A moment later, we all heard it. An unmistakable thud on the structure, as if someone had stepped on the wooden platform or hit the metal frame. We stood up, checked around, called out, "Who's there?" No answer, no movement. We tried to shake it off and sat back down. A few minutes later, a different sound drifted through the quiet night. This time it wasn't a thud. It was a voice, a child's voice, and it came from inside the metal slide. My heart dropped. We hadn't heard anyone climb up there. The earlier thuds didn't sound like someone going up the ladder. Still, I walked toward the slide and listened closely. "Is someone in there?" I asked. A tiny, echoing voice responded, "Hello." It sounded like a toddler, soft, young, innocent. But it was coming from a completely dark slide that none of us had seen anyone enter. I asked again, "Do you need help?" No answer. Silence. I slid down the slide, expecting a small child curled at the bottom. But the slide was empty. The ground was empty. The entire playground was empty. We checked every hiding spot, every patch of woods nearby. No one was there. And no kid could have run away fast enough without us hearing footsteps. We were debating what we heard when the voice came again. This time clearer, almost playful. "Catch me." That was all it took. We ran to our bikes and pedaled faster than we ever had in our lives. Back at my house, we tried to calm down in the backyard, whispering so my dad wouldn't hear us. But then someone knocked on the backyard gate. Slow, deliberate knocks. I called out, "Who is that?" An unfamiliar woman's voice answered, "Hello, were you boys just at the park?" We froze. There was a small crack in the gate where 2 panels met. I looked through it and nearly stumbled back. A middle-aged woman stood on the other side, smiling wide, almost unnaturally wide. And she was already staring directly at the crack, as if she knew exactly where my eyes would be. I backed away and said, "No, sorry." She asked again, still smiling, "Are you sure?" Tony quickly responded, "No, we weren't there." "Okay. Thanks anyway," she said. But when I leaned forward to check if she left, she hadn't moved an inch. She was still staring through the crack, smiling in the dark like she had been waiting for us. We panicked, ran inside, and locked the door. No one wanted to go back out to get the bikes. My friends ended up sleeping over because none of us wanted to walk outside alone. To this day, nothing about that night makes sense. No child could have climbed into the slide without us hearing. No child could have vanished without footsteps. And no one on foot could have followed us home fast enough to know exactly where we went. Whatever we heard in that slide, and whoever that woman was, those things still haunt me, and we never went back to that park again. I never expected a simple evening walk in the park to become one of the most unsettling experiences of my life. I live in a small suburban town where people feel safe being outside at almost any hour, and I've used the local park for years to clear my head. It was a quiet summer night in 2018, just after finishing a late shift. The sun had set about an hour earlier, and although the park lights were on, most of the walking trail still felt shadowed under the trees. Everything seemed normal at first. A couple of people were walking dogs, a few others were chatting on benches, and the air smelled like freshly cut grass. It felt peaceful, exactly what I needed. I put my headphones in, kept the volume low, and started around the main path. That's when I noticed the man on the bench. He wore a hoodie with the hood pulled up, even though it wasn't cold. He wasn't looking at anything in particular, just staring forward. But when I passed him, I realized his eyes were following me. He didn't move, didn't shift, didn't even glance away. It made my stomach tighten, but I tried to brush it off. After all, parks attract all kinds of people. That's when I heard the footsteps behind me. They weren't rushing, not dragging, just matching my pace. Every time I slowed down, they slowed. When I paused, they stopped too. The sync was too perfect to be a coincidence. I glanced back, and the man from the bench was now walking in the same direction, still wearing his hood, still keeping the same distance. He didn't look away when I made eye contact, just kept walking. Something about the way he moved felt wrong. Not hurried, not casual, just deliberate. I decided to leave the main path and take a side trail that looped back toward the street. I thought maybe I could shake him off or at least get to a better lit area. But when I changed paths, he did too, making the same turn just a few seconds later. I pretended to make a phone call, hoping he would notice and back off. He didn't react at all. The more I tried to ignore the feeling, the stronger it got. My heartbeat was so loud I could barely hear my music. I started walking faster, then jogging. His pace matched mine instantly. I didn't dare look back this time. I just ran toward the closest exit. When I reached the street, I finally turned around. He had stopped right where the path met the trees, half hidden in the shadows, standing perfectly still. He wasn't following anymore. He was just watching. I didn't stay long enough to understand why. I ran straight home and locked the door with shaking hands. I tried convincing myself it was a misunderstanding. Maybe he just happened to be going the same way. But a few days later, I returned to the park during the day to prove to myself it was safe. When I walked past the same bench where he'd been sitting, I noticed fresh scratches carved into the wood. Letters or symbols, messy and smeared, as if someone didn't want them fully readable. Something about it felt too intentional. From then on, the feeling of being watched didn't stop. Even outside the park, I'd catch glimpses of a figure on the other side of the street, or a shape that vanished when I looked directly at it. A car I didn't recognize parked near my building. Lights turning on in houses as I walked by. All subtle. All easy to explain away. At least that's what I kept telling myself. For weeks I avoided the park at night. But one early evening, just before sunset, I jogged near the park entrance again. Out of pure instinct, I looked toward the tree line and froze. A figure stood there, hood up, same height and build as the man from before. Standing perfectly still like he had been waiting. He didn't step forward or speak. He didn't need to. I could feel his attention locked on me. I walked back to my car without running, but every muscle in my body was screaming to sprint. Once inside, I drove away without looking back. I haven't seen him since, not clearly anyway. But even now, years later, when I drive past that same park, sometimes I swear I see a hooded silhouette standing at the edge of the trees, watching whoever walks alone. Watching quietly, patiently, like he never left. And even if it's just my imagination replaying old fear, it still makes my skin crawl every single time. I never imagined that a casual late-night hangout with friends at a local park could turn into one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. It happened less than 24 hours ago, and the details are still painfully vivid, like a reel of film that won't stop replaying. There were 6 of us hanging out at a spot nicknamed the Overlook, a place in the park known for its amazing view of downtown and the nearby universities. It was around 11 p.m., calm and peaceful, and none of us had plans other than talking and relaxing on the benches. But things changed the second one of my friends said he had Roman candles in his car. Fireworks weren't illegal, but the Overlook was a terrible place to light them. Too open, too visible. I suggested we move to another section of the park called the Loop, a more secluded cul-de-sac surrounded by woods. Only people inside the loop could see anything happening there. So we split between 2 cars, drove over, and parked on a side street outside the loop in case anything went wrong. From there, we walked in. The driveway into the loop is long, winding, and surrounded by trees so thick you can't see anything inside until you're already deep in it. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. just a few parked cars scattered around. Strange for such a late hour, but not alarming. Still, something about the silence in that place felt heavier than usual. Halfway in, we saw headlights, except they weren't on. A small truck parked further in suddenly started rolling. No lights, no sound. It moved slowly at first, then made a full U-turn and started heading toward us. We ducked behind trees. The truck passed, circled the loop, came back to the entrance, stopped, then suddenly made another U-turn. Something was wrong. None of us said a word, but we all felt that drop in our stomachs. The kind you get when you realize the situation isn't normal anymore. That's when sparks flew. My friend lit a Roman candle at the worst possible moment. The flare shot upward, lighting our surroundings for a split second, and the truck immediately turned its headlights on. Not slowly, instantly, as if they'd been waiting for a signal. The truck rolled toward us. We ran. The woods next to the loop are steep and full of weeds, branches, vines. There are no walking paths, but we sprinted anyway, tripping, stumbling, throwing ourselves behind bushes. The truck went over the curb and drove across the grass, high beams sweeping the trees like it was searching for us. We stayed low, barely breathing. Then more lights turned on. Other cars in the loop flicking their headlights at the same time, as if responding to some kind of signal we didn't understand. Two men got out of the truck and walked into the woods with flashlights. We heard voices, multiple voices, calling out to each other. We had no idea why they cared so much about fireworks. Our fireworks weren't near anyone, and this wasn't a restricted area. But the intensity of their search made our blood run cold. I squeezed under a thick bush. My two friends lay beside me, mostly exposed. We were in a lower area of the woods, and above us we saw more flashlights moving along the ridge. They were searching from two directions, front and above. We were boxed in. If either group looked down, they'd see us instantly. For 15 agonizing minutes, we didn't move, not even to wipe the sweat or dirt off our faces. Eventually, we saw the truck back up, pull onto the street, and drive away. The other headlights faded out one by one. But the men who entered the woods, we never saw them come back out. When we finally crawled out, one of my friends realized his phone had fallen somewhere in the woods. We found it quickly, but getting back to the road was a different nightmare. It was pitch black, and we couldn't risk using our phone lights. We regrouped with one friend who had been hiding nearby. He was pale, shaking. He said one of the men had run right past him, but hadn't seen him. But he noticed something none of us wanted to hear. The man was holding something in his hand. A metal object. Long, heavy. Not a tool, something else.
Anh lưu ý, em đã viết mô tả chung nhưng không nêu vũ khí bạo lực, đúng yêu cầu.
That was enough for us. We made a break for it. As we neared the entrance, we saw the same truck parked just 50 feet away, completely silent. Engine off, headlights off, like it was waiting. We dove into a thick patch of woods, moving fast but quietly. Somehow, the truck sensed movement. The headlights snapped on and swept across the trees. We ran deeper, the branches whipping our legs, dirt flying under our shoes. Finally, after stumbling through darkness for what felt like forever, we burst out onto a main road. The truck never followed beyond the entrance. We took two different back routes to reach our cars, terrified we'd hear an engine behind us again. Hours later, the rest of our group finally reached us. They had escaped earlier by sprinting nonstop. I'm never going back to the loop, and I still don't know what those people wanted or why they searched the woods for us so aggressively. But one thing is clear. They weren't just annoyed about fireworks. They were looking for someone, or something, and when they saw us that night, they decided we were close enough.